The oldest child often becomes the responsible one. They are the helper. They are the one who have to carry the expectations and be the example for their brothers and sisters. Then there is the middle child, who are sometimes feel overlooked, or they have to be the peacemaker, and a lot of times they end up being the one that has to do things on their own because they know that they will never be the one that do the things first, because they'll never be the first one to talk, the first one to walk, the first one to do something really cute. Usually by the time they're on to the middle child, the parents are already over all of the excitement. And then comes that youngest child, who often is protected, and they the baby. And so, but sometimes they're not always taken seriously because they are the baby. Why does being a sister still carry so much emotion? If you ever wondered why sibling relationships can feel both loving but complicated at the same time, stay with me today, because this conversation may help you understand something about your own story, and I know it'll help me with mine. Hey, my Mama Faye family, come on in. Let's take a seat and relax. Let's have this conversation today. For those of you, this is your first time, I'm Mama Faye, and I'm on a mission to elevate women who are becoming. Women who are growing into themselves in real time, and women who hold families, careers, and relationships together. I bring my lived experience as a wife, a mom, a nurse, a leader, a coach, and a woman who has walked through many seasons in life. Today, we are talking about something that many women know all too well, and that is becoming a sister. And the title of today's episode is Sisterhood and Family Expectation, Healing Sibling Relationships as an Adult. Not just being born into a family with siblings, but becoming the woman who understands what that relationship means and how you are now that you're an adult. Because believe it or not, it changes. Relationships between siblings, which I mean brothers and sisters, are some of the longest relationships you would ever have in your lifetime. Sometimes it's longer than your friendships with other people. Often it's longer than marriages. And brothers and sisters share memories, they share family stories, and they share family pain and crisis. But somehow, as we grow up, that relationship can often change. Some siblings become best friends. Some grow apart, and some grow so distant they are not even speaking. While some still struggle with things that started with you as a child, and some are still carrying those old grudges. Many women are trying to figure out how to hold these relationships together while also becoming who you were meant to be. So let's talk honestly about what shapes these brother and sister relationships. First, there is the birth order, in which is one of the biggest influences. And then you have the oldest child, who often becomes the responsible one. That usually is the helper, the one who carries the expectation, and the one who is often seen as the one who has to set the example. Man, that's a lot of pressure. Then you have the middle child, who sometimes feels overlooked, or who may even feel like they have to become the peacemaker. Usually they have to do things on their own, because they're never really the one that does things first. So most people are not excited by the time they've done it. And usually they're not the baby, the cute little cuddly baby. And so let's talk about the youngest child, who often is protected. And they're usually the one who is also given a lot of adoration, and they usually get a lot of passes that often is not given to the older or the middle child. But for them, sometimes they're not taken seriously. Now, none of these roles are always true and always fit every person, because it depends on how long it's been between each person the children were born. That has a lot to play with it. Sometimes they're raised in different circumstances, or they may be in different households. But many of us recognize one or all of the parts of ourselves in these patterns. And then there is something families rarely want to talk about openly, or others do talk about it, but sometimes it ends up in fights, meaning little squabbles and little conflicts, and that is favoritism. Sometimes one child is seen as the chosen one, the one who receives all of the praise, most of the support, and most of the attention, while you have another child who may feel like they are the least favorite. They are the ones who feel different, feel misunderstood, and feel like they're being judged more harshly. And maybe they may be perceived as the one who made a mistake, and so now they feel like they're being shunned. Those are early experiences that can shape how sister-brother relationships and how we relate to each other, even decades later, long into our adult years. And then many women carry the expectation that as siblings or brothers and sisters, that they always have to be there for each other no matter what. And sometimes that expectation really brings a lot of pressure. But let's talk about in healthy families. In healthy families, something beautiful can also happen. And it can happen in all of that we just talked about. There still can be this. Brothers and sisters can become allies. They can become good friends, and they can become protectors. In other words, if you mess with one of us, you have messed with all of us. And people who know you and your story, nobody knows you really like your brother and sister. They know your story better than anyone else. And in many cases, brothers and sisters are the ones who shows up during crisis. When you have that flat tire and you need to call your brother to come help you with the flat tire, or you need that brother to come and help figure out what's wrong with the car, or you need that sister to help babysit some of your children because you and your wife need a break. What they do, siblings watch out for each other. A lot of times they stand together when life becomes difficult. And many women reach a point where they ask themselves a powerful question. How do I become a sister in a healthy way, or keep a healthy relationship now that I am an adult? Because it's a little bit easier when you're a child to be able to be connected with your brothers and sisters. But a lot of time as you become adult and you start having your own family, or you go in your own way, sometimes go off to college, sometimes maybe a job send you to a different location. How do we still have a healthy relationship with those that we grew up with. Because becoming a sister is really about growth. It is about seeing the relationship with love, patience, but also forgiveness instead of the old pain and past hurts. Some sisters and brothers' relationship grow closer with time, and then some need a healthy distance. In other words, you love them, but you need to love them from afar. Some need healthy conversations that have never happened before. There are certain things that have happened during your childhood and you all never talked about it. Sometimes you and I will find out that things aren't the way that they seem, especially when you have a conversation. Sometimes the way that you remember it happening wasn't always that you had the whole story. Sometimes you only saw what happened in part. A lot of times you weren't there when certain conversations were happening with that child that you was not privy to, meaning you weren't around to hear what was being said and what was being spoken to that child that made that child or your brother and sister act the way that they're responding. And some women are learning how to release those expectations that were never fair to begin with, because a lot of times things weren't the way that you really remember it. But here is what I want you to remember today. Being a sister does not mean you must stay stuck in those childhood roles. It means you have the opportunity to redefine the relationship as the woman you are becoming or the sister that you're becoming. And sometimes it means giving yourself and your brothers and sisters the permission to heal and to grow. Sometimes they will and sometimes they won't. But give it a chance. Before we go further, let's do a quick emotional check-in with you. Take a moment and ask yourself something honestly. When you think about your siblings, your brothers and sisters, what emotion shows up first? Is it warmth? Or is it trying to distance yourself? Is it responsibility? You feel responsible for them? Or do you feel frustrated? Sometimes love have mixed emotions because of the old memories, or do you feel a little bit hurt because there are some things that you all never really discussed and was able to come to some type of resolution? But whatever you feel, it is valid, but it deserves your attention. You are not alone in trying to understand these relationships. Most of us who have brothers and sisters have those same questions and also have to navigate through how we're going to deal and what our relationship is going to look like now that we are adults. And many of us in our adult years, whether you're in your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, and beyond, are rethinking how your family dynamics has grown and how they're growing into their own relationships. And the goal of becoming a sister is not really perfection, but it's being honest and then having clarity, and it is about redefining those feelings. Because when you understand the role that your parents played, you understand the role that you played in your family and the role that your sisters and brothers played, and not to mention the role that a lot of times the environment, in other words, the people around you played in your life. Because people can often say things like, oh, this is the cute one, and that makes the other children feel a little bit less than. Or they can also bring one child little gifts and give them little presents, not realizing that they are hurting the other children who are siblings and brothers and sisters who are looking on. And what a lot of times that causes is a lot of conflict between the brother and the sisters, because one person is getting little extra attention where the other ones are not. And some people in your life, or in your life as a child, can also say mean things and say little stuff that, little digs that bring conflict and bring confusion. But you have to understand that as a child, it is not that child's fault that they got special attention. So a lot of times we have to bring that into focus and when we become an adult, because that may a lot of times cause us to have certain feelings toward our brothers and sisters that are not necessarily fair. I'll leave you with that. So you now can decide how you can reframe those old memories and how to choose how you show up now. Not from pressure to force a relationship, but from a choice. Other words, choosing to keep the relationship and redefining that relationship. Now, here are 3 simple steps that you and I can use to rebuild healthier sibling relationships. First, we can understand the family role we grew up with. Let's take a moment and ask ourselves what role you were given as a child. Were you the responsible one, the quiet one, the strong one, or the one who felt left out? What role did your parents play? Many of our childhood traumas are from the way that our parents treated us and treated each one of us differently. See the role clearly will help you to stop carrying it automatically into your adulthood. And it helps us to see each other differently. And then, yes, sometimes we have to set those clear and kind boundaries, because a lot of times healthy relationships need a space. And the reason why it needs space, because sometimes these conversations can turn into arguments, or they can turn into emotional stress. And it is okay if you need to limit how and when you engage your brothers and sisters. Sometimes boundaries protect those relationships instead of destroying it. But we always want to encourage that you still try to keep some sort of relationship. And look for small ways to rebuild and connect. Instead of fixing the whole relationship at once, let's just start with small steps. Send a message, share a memory, check in during a hard moment when you know your brother and sister is having a hard time. Just check in. And sometimes that trust often can grow again through small, consistent actions. Now, for more on how you can rebuild healthy relationships with your brothers and sisters, I need you to check out this week's Becomers newsletter, where we dive deeply into these relationships and how to rebuild them. Before we close, let's do our weekly Becoming check-in. Where are you with your becoming goals for this week? My goal this week is simple. I am resetting my exercise goals. It's not about starting perfect. It's just about starting and about staying consistent. Because becoming is not about doing everything at once. It is about being consistent with the habits that help you grow into who you want to become. Now leave me a comment and let me know what you are becoming and what goals you are working on. You can reach me on substack.com to connect about your becoming goals. And I would love to read those messages and hear what you are building in your life. Now, as we close today's episode, remember this. Your becoming journey is not separate from your relationships. it includes them. Sometimes healing family relationship becomes part of the woman you are growing into. Sometimes acceptance have to replace those old wounds. Sometimes understanding your brothers and sisters' personalities without taking it personal will help create peace. But either way, you and they are allowed to grow. And if this episode spoke to you, please follow me and subscribe to the Mama Faye Becoming Me podcast and leave an emoji or simply type in #becoming in the comments. And I want you to continue to listen at MOMAFEY-HT.podbean.com, where the podcast is available on more than 8 podcast platforms. And more importantly, you can also find the podcast on Substack under Motivate Moment by MOMAFEY-HT. Then you can look for this particular podcast, which is MOMAFEY-HT Becoming Me podcast. And this is one of 3 podcasts that I do. And the reason why I want you to go and subscribe there is so that you will never miss an episode, and each episode is delivered directly to your inbox. And on that same platform is my Becomers newsletter that accompanies this particular podcast. And each one of those newsletter each week mimics the topics that I'm talking about. Like this week, I'm going to talk more, and I'm going to go more into detail about becoming a sister. And so it gives you a little bit more insight on what we talked about today. And if you want to stay focused on your progress, because remember, we're on a mission. Our mission is to become the thing that we're meant to be this year. And we got a lot of distractions. So a lot of times what we need is that journal so that we can write down those goals and we can track them so that we can continue to keep building our life in the midst of everything that is going on. All right. So for more information, I need you to go to MOMAFEY-HT hometraining.com/becoming me in 2026. And you'll find all of the information and everything is on that page. And you can also find me at MOMAFEY-HT across every social media platform so we can continue the conversation about becoming and everything else that I'm doing. Now, next week, we really are going to talk about becoming the caregiver. I wanted to set up and progress to becoming a caregiver because a part of becoming a caregiver is becoming that daughter and also becoming that sister, because all of that is going to play into becoming a caregiver. And if you are someone you know are a caregiver, you will not want to miss this next episode. And I need you to tell a friend or someone, a coworker or someone about this podcast because they may want to become too. Now, before I go, I'm going to leave you with this final thought. Becoming a great sister can be powerful. It is the moment that you realize you have grown beyond the roles you were given, and you choose the kind of relationship that match who you are becoming now. That's all for today. I'll see you next time. And I got something to say.